You might think of it as just a boring American car, a plain little compact that was a simple and economical way to get from point A to point B. All right, it always was that last part, but it was actually British born, before Queen was even a twinkle in Freddie Mercury's eye. And it was breaking sales records and winning rallies before you even thought it existed. This is everything you need to know to get up to speed on the Ford Escort. It was the late 60s and Ford UK needed to replace their successful but very old Anglia model. They'd seen how popular the Mini had become, especially after it transitioned from practical city runabout to winning race car. Ford had some sales and motorsport success with the Cortina, but they wanted to build something smaller and cuter that could do even better than the Mini. They adopted the Coke bottle shape that was selling so well in the States, put on a dog bone grille, and stole the Escort name off a trim level of the Ford Squire, which was actually a wagon model of the Anglia. Yeah. I don't know why things had so many different names back then. So, production of the all-new Ford Escort began in late 1967 and expanded to the rest of Europe in '68. There was a body style for everyone. A two-door saloon, a two-door estate, a four-door saloon, a panel van for distributors of free candy. By the middle of 1974, they'd made 2 million Escorts, more than any other Ford model sold outside of the US. They mostly came with weak, little, cross-flow 1.1 and 1.3 liter four-cylinder engines, but the cars were rear-wheel drive. And the 1300 GT performance models came with Weber carbs, upgraded suspension, and a speedometer. The lower trim levels had like 50 horsepower and were so slow that you didn't need to know how fast you were going because you couldn't go fast, but they were still better than the Anglia, which ambled to 60 miles per hour in somewhere around 20 seconds. That's like the Bohemian Rhapsody of 0 to 60 times. So you think you can something and spit in my eye? Just as Ford hoped, people raced them, and they raced them a lot. Right after they rolled off the line, Escorts were all over European tracks and rally stages. Ford quickly started offering sportier versions with healthy triple-digit horsepower, like the 1.5 liter Lotus-powered twin-cam Escort, followed by the 1.6 liter Cosworth-powered RS1600. RS stands for Rally Sport, don't you know? Finnish rally legend HANNU MIKKOLA. Maybe you've heard of him, you know, the guy who drove Group B Audi Quattros in the 80s. I mentioned him in this episode on the Audi Quattro. If you missed it, check it out after this one's done. HANNU drove Escorts to a crap ton of Group 2 WRC wins for a decade, but the most important win was the first London to Mexico World Cup rally in 1970 behind the wheel of a modified RS1600. That's 16,000 bouncy, unair-conditioned miles through Europe, South America, and Central America. Literally, London to Mexico City. 5 Escorts finished in the top 10 of that rally, a significant accomplishment no other manufacturer matched. To commemorate their big success, Ford built an 86 horsepower Escort Mexico Special Edition with a reinforced chassis, but without the other 6 stuff you need for rallying. People loved it anyway and bought over 10,000 of them. Ford stepped it up in 1973 with the faster and more refined RS200, powered by a 2-liter overhead cam Pinto engine. The Ford Works race team killed it with the Mark I Escort right from the start, and they carried right on through the car's next generation. 1975 saw the debut of the Mark II Escort, which was pretty much just a big facelift. The late 70s saw 3 special editions: the Lynette, the Harrier, and the Goldcrest. Sounds like new characters in Game of Thrones spinoff, but apparently them's is kinds of birds. And you know that the birds is the words. The Mark II RS2000 was given a more distinctive look with 4 headlights, a droopy black polyurethane nose, and a rubber spoiler. It was just about as fast as a Saab turbo in a BMW 320i, so the Escort was starting to swing its little big deck around. The Mark II was a bit quirky though. The horn was on one of the stalks for some reason. I don't know if it was turn signals or windshield wipers. And the glove box only came on the higher trims because only rich people can afford gloves. Well, it didn't matter much. They still sold a ton of them, and it was the best-selling car in Britain in 1976. For the track, Ford bumped the RS1600 up to an RS1800 and added talented drivers Roger Clark, Bjorn Valdergaard, Timo Mäkinen, and Ari Vatanen. The Cosworth rally car engines were up to 250 horsepower. They won all over the place, including the Safari Rally for a second time. There were 3 Escorts in the top 5 of the 1979 WRC Drivers' Championship, with Bjorn winning the whole thing and Ford taking the manufacturer's crown. 'Cause we are the champions, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting to the end. Everything changed in 1980 with the Mark III generation. The new Escort was entirely new from the wheels up, and now it went toe-to-toe with the newly popular Honda Civic and Volkswagen Golf, which happens to be my favorite car. And for the first time, the Escort model and its corporate twin, the Mercury Lynx, appeared in the US, but it was only barely related to the European version. You could get it as a 3-door hatch, a 5-door wagon, or a 5-door hatch. Ford actually trademarked the stumpy looking butt on the hatchbacks as the aeroback. It dropped the car's drag coefficient quite a bit to improve fuel economy, and they used it on a couple of their other cars later on. Can I trademark my butt too? I mean, it actually produces its own gas. Check, 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 check. Hey guys, if you're like me, you love stunts, you ever wonder how they do them? I wondered. This Wednesday, a new 3-part miniseries debuts on Donut. We break down the coolest stunts the world has ever seen. It's tight. Europe got a 1.6-liter diesel that was slow as fluff, but turned an amazing 70 mpgs, which is insane considering that diesels nowadays don't get 70 mpgs. But what about the sporty Escorts, James? That's why we came. New performance editions like the RS1600i and XR3i got fuel injection and made 150 horsepower, while the GT model in the States got a turbo and made 120. Europe's RS Turbo Series 1 made about 130 horsepower, had Recaro seats and an LSD. All the Mark III Escorts now had a more modern, fully independent suspension, but despite that, they had a much rougher ride than their competition, which made them a tougher sell. Meanwhile, Ford engineers were working on a rear-wheel drive, turbocharged Cosworth 1.7-liter Rally Escort for racing in WRC's Group B. Homologated street cars were gonna make 200 horsepower, and the race versions would make 350. Then they checked in on what was happening in WRC and saw, I think I just had an excitement poo-poo. There was no point in continuing. Literally, they threw in the towel. Only 17 cars were made before they pulled the rug out. But the RS1700Ts were fast little numbers that could hit 60 miles per hour in 4.2 seconds. It wasn't all for naught though. The go-fast guys at Ford took what they learned from those 17 cars and put it all back into one of the sickest rally cars ever! Lightning! 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 Technically, it's not really an Escort, but this is my show, and I do what I want. The RS200 was Ford's mid-engine, all-wheel drive answer to the Group B question, and unlike the Audi Quattro S1, it wasn't based on an existing production car. The RS200 debuted in the 1986 WRC season and unfortunately found itself at the center of Group B's demise. If you want to learn more about that, click this right here. Now back to the Escort part of the story. The Mark IV generation went on sale in Europe in 1986. Engines got bigger and the crappy Bosch K-Jectronic was replaced with central point fuel injection. Bosch K-Tronic, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's the worst. Meanwhile, The US first-gen Escort carried on all the way through 1990 with just a couple of facelifts in 85 and 88. The start of the 90s launched the second generation, and Ford moved all US Escorts to the Mazda B platform. They became more like the Ford Laser models in Australia than they were like the Escorts sold in Europe. They thought about changing the name to Laser, but Plymouth was already using that name in their Eclipse clone. So American Escorts moseyed on as economical, compact cars. There was a kind of sporty GT trim with 127 horsepower and a Mazda engine. It had disc brakes, dual exhaust, and alloy wheels, but Europe really kept the really good stuff. Their Mark V RS200 got the largest Sierra sedan's 150 horsepower 2-liter engine and optional all-wheel drive. Then Ford tried to win at WRC again, and good things always come out of that. The Escort RS Cosworth came with a boosted 2-liter Cosworth engine making 225 horsepower with all-wheel drive. Designer Frank Stevenson put the cherry on top. A big old whale tail that literally nobody hates. The tuned-up Cozzies won a lot of rallies, and Escort lovers won too. Early production cars had big turbos and the big lag that came along with that. People wanted to buy way more than the 2,500 Ford needed to sell to race them, so Ford just kept building them. 7,145 Cozzies sold from 92 to 96. The mid-90s Mark VI Escort was similar to the Mark V. Ford revised everything as the decade went by, but competitors were chugging along faster. The brand new Focus was set to come out in 1998, and Ford started paring down the Escort lineup as sales moved over to the fresher model. The once best-selling little Euro runabout was done before the year 2000 was out. On this side of the Atlantic, the third-gen Escort dropped in 96 and added a sportier coupe body style.
ZX2 Sport Coupe.
It's just a blast to drive.
The 98 ZX2 replaced the GT trim and the Ford Probe and came with a 2-liter Z-Tech 4-cylinder making about 130 horsepower. Around the same time, tuners were snapping up Civic SIs and Neon ACRs. Ford's response? The ZX2 SR. It had everything a late 90s hot boy wanted. A blue valve cover, high flow intake, Borla exhaust, iBox springs, Tokiko shocks, and a B&M short shifter. The mods were good for a bump in power to 143 horses, and you could hardly put together a better aftermarket name drop for the time. I want one.
He's an idiot.
The last new North American Escort left a factory in Mexico in early 2003. For more than 30 years, the Ford Escort consistently gave us somebody to love. If they didn't before, the RS editions definitely will rock you. But the Escort is gone and the Focus is saying, now I'm here. Not for long though, because Ford is going all killer queen on cars and is gonna make almost entirely crossovers. Another one bites the dust.
Dude, did you know all queen jokes?
Yo, thanks for watching Donut Media. It blows my mind every day. Hit that subscribe button. If you like this, hit that like button. It really, really helps us out. Did you guys know that Dodge used to own Ford? You want to learn that story? Check out this episode of my son Nolan's show. Follow me on Instagram at James Pumphrey. Follow Donut at Donut Media.